Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I was inspired to do my own video after watching Kirsty's from the other day talking about compulsive behaviors and some of the compulsive behaviors she had. I thought I would really dive into some of the things I really struggle with in my journey with OCD to date. I've been working on recovery for 18 months now. I'm light years from where I was, and I had a lot of compulsive behaviors, a lot of them being mental compulsions, which people hear me talk about all the time. So I'm going to go into great depth about the internal thermometer, which I have done many times. So don't forget to subscribe down below. Lots of great videos going up. A little bit more deep videos going to be coming out about my particular journey in itself, instead of maybe so much the tools, where you might get to know me a little bit better. So when I first of all, let's talk about what a compulsion is. So a compulsion in obsessive compulsive disorder format, a compulsion is something that people do to rid themselves of how they're feeling in the moment, but it doesn't teach them to move with uncertainty. It doesn't teach them to wear anxiety like an uncomfortable coat, and kind of keeps us stuck, and we don't really go anywhere. Well, it doesn't kind of, it does keep us stuck. It keeps the hamster wheel going. There's a lot of people that talk about pure OCD, which is a terminology we tend not to use because there is no such thing as obsessions without compulsions. The majority of your compulsions are just more hidden, probably, such as the internal thermometer. So you cannot have obsessive compulsive disorder without compulsions being present. It's part of the disorder. So, and remember, compulsive behaviors, as I was saying in the recent video, are very common for many people. We're not just talking about OCD people. People that might be very stressed in the workforce might vape or smoke cigarettes every time they're anxious. They might resort to the bottle, unfortunately. They might sit on TikTok for 6 hours straight. So compulsive behaviors are very common to human beings, and they tend not to get us what we want. It tend to hinder the quality of our life and loss of productivity and stuff like that. But we can recognize them, accept that we have them, work at accepting, trying to change them, and then accept that that might not work on our new path, and we can always rearrange and go from there. So when it came to the things in my life that were really detrimental to my life and my recovery journey, were really coming down to avoidance types of behavior. So I literally just took my nail off my toe with my other foot. That was fun. I was like, what is that pain? So some of the major compulsive behaviors I had were the video games. They were a compulsive avoidance behavior. Video game literature is actually quite interesting. There's a really good website called The Healthy Gamer, who probably is the #1 video game psychiatry researcher on earth. He was a severe video gamer himself. He doesn't think personally that video games are as chemically addicting as, say, heroin, crack, meth, nicotine, and stuff like that, and more used for coping behaviors. So he doesn't know if long-term avoidance is actually the answer. It sounds pretty similar, right? When it comes to caffeine, lots of people are like, I have to cut this out forever. And while that might be the case for certain people, I still don't play video games after 18 months. When I was playing video games, and the problem with video games and these other very, very addictively in apps, they're made to be addictive. They have attention engineers hired from MIT, Yale, Harvard, all these Ivy League schools, with the purpose of how to keep your attention go, how to actually kind of like hijack your dopamine system in a way. It's quite interesting in the Social Dilemma documentary on Netflix. I like watching that one. So I was avoiding everything, and I didn't want to deal with any discomfort. So my video games were really my major addiction. My major addiction / compulsive behavior. Other compulsive behaviors that I really struggle with my body dysmorphic stuff were constantly wearing certain types of clothing. I would avoid certain types of clothing because I didn't like the way it made me feel. On top of that, I would constantly change my workout program. I've actually still been struggling with this for about 15 years now. So Rob has a little bit of an assignment for me to do, which I didn't do before because I was very anxious about it. He wants me to take off the gym for a month because he knows I put a lot of my self-worth on the way I look. I think this will be very good for me in the long run and learning how to do other things in my life. Gone for now doesn't mean gone forever. I had to do the same thing. I'm a little bit more calm about this now than I was before because I've worked a little bit more in acceptance. And, even if I never went to the gym again, I certainly wouldn't like that, but I could have other hobbies. I could learn how to write better. We could have more time to read. So there's other things like that. I definitely would not enjoy that as a scenario. It does get me a little bit anxious right now, even just thinking about that, but that's completely okay. Now, the internal thermometer that people are always asking me to speak about is it's a great question. So let me move this back a little bit. I got all my paper up here and I do my daily notes. So you basically have this thermometer, and I use the pen. So the thermometer comes up and it looks like that. Okay, like, so let's say that's the thermometer. And inside the thermometer, you have feelings, you have situations, you have images, you have thoughts, you have all these different, things that correlate into your fears of OCD and really can become a problem. So what happens is you wake up in the bottom of the chart, okay, so these are all the things I wrote. So remember, we have feelings, situations, images, urges, sensations, thoughts, all that. The bottom of the chart is when you wake up in the morning, okay? So this is morning down here, okay? And then let's say the top is night. So let's say you're awake for, 18 hours. Sleep 8 hours, you're up. Sleep 6 hours, you're up for 18 hours. So all this time throughout your day is what you're doing is you're more than likely walking around saying to yourself, let's use the situation example. That's a great example that Rob talked about and myself. We're going to bring the situation out here to another example, and we're going to talk about the barber shop, okay? So next time you go back to the barber shop, you may say to yourself, oh, am I going to be more anxious here? Am I going to be less anxious? And then what happens is maybe you feel a little bit better and you start honing in and chasing that feeling. So that internal thermometer there's actually hundreds of little thermometers going on. It's not just one. Maybe you have one for images, maybe one for intrusive thoughts, maybe one's for sensations, maybe a separate thermometer at every single place you've gone to and had a panic attack. So let's say you had a panic attack at the mall. So now you have an internal thermometer called panic attack at the mall, okay? And it's in the warehouse of internal thermometers, and you go to the mall and that internal thermometer gets turned on like in the switchboard, and now you're like, oh my, do I feel like I did the last time I was here? It's really actually quite complex when you look at it, but it actually isn't that complex of a recovery plan. It does take a lot of time to get yourself to a place to where you're bringing the fear down. So people always ask me, Nick, this feels 100% automatic. How do I stop doing this? And this isn't just for OCD. People do this all the time. This is what humans do. They attach a feeling. Humans are feelings chasers. We like to feel good. We like dopamine, especially if, you're like myself, and people call myself a dopamine addict. You like speeding, you like hiking, all these other things. So, it's quite interesting. But the number one thing is what happens is I totally forgot to turn my video off. So all my what's ups are coming up. I usually put myself on airplane mode. So I'm watching conversations happen in the moderator group. So, you're walking around doing all this stuff. Again, Nick, how do I bring this down? It's a great question. The number one way how you bring this down is you need to bring the fear down over time. This is why disputing the core fear a couple times a day could be huge. It's why moving with uncertainty and wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat is so important for bringing down the internal thermometer. So imagine you have that room, right, with all the switchboards, okay? So all the different thermometers, there's hundreds of thermometers. You got the one for images, sensations, thoughts, places you've been. What happened was, as you get better at your fear, as you get better moving forward in recovery, the switchboard, in a crude way to describe it, starts to malfunction. You no longer turn on the switches for the, let's say, you no longer turn on the mall switch, because you now realize that even if I had a panic attack in the mall and other people, they looked at me and they judged me, it wouldn't be as scary as people make it out to be. And this is a gigantic thing when it comes to moving forward. You could stop a lot of rumination. You could stop a lot of the internal thermometer measuring, the outward ones where you're doing it. But the automatic rumination, the automatic comparing, this tends to not come down until one gets a little bit better with the fear. So that was really the major compulsion for somatic OCD and anxiety symptoms that I see, is that people will go about their days and they will measure this like an internal thermometer, as I said, 10 times already. Some of the other smaller compulsions that I had, schooling was huge, a lot of them. So when I was getting my doctorate, I was very big in the research. I was a member of a couple journals. I spent 2 to 3 hours a day reading literature. A lot of the literature, which was very repetitive in nature, especially in the exercise physiology community and in the pain science literature. Pain science is growing a lot more than, say, exercise physiology. But say like exercise physiology, we're not looking on like correct dosages of like L-carnitine and these little tiny things that don't really matter a whole lot in life, but we think they do because we have perfectionistic belief systems. So I would read research and always think I would need to know more research in order to prove to people that I needed to be a smarter person. So all those compulsive behaviors that I was doing when it came to reading and stuff like that was a problem. Something I kind of struggle with now in a way is, reading something and then needing to tell someone. I still struggle with this. I don't think it's a necessary thing to do. There's nothing wrong with talking about your readings with someone or talking about any type of information. But, I would have to read something and automatically go out there and tell people I read it. So, this is 18 months I've been working on my journey, and there's still a lot of progress to be made. So don't get discouraged if your journey takes a couple years or even takes 5 years for yourself. It's very easy to comparative suffer. Comparative suffering can be a compulsion in its own way. You're always looking for relief by thinking, or not even so much for relief, but it can be a compulsive behavior that you have, putting you in that self-pity route that Sadie's done a tremendous video on. I think Kirsty's done videos on that as well. So those are really the big ones for me. Me having ADHD, my impulsiveness really was holding me back and still holds me back in a lot of ways, because my impulsiveness, and I think many people's impulsive behaviors, whether you have attention deficit disorder or hyperactive disorder or not, is when you do not like the way you're feeling, so you need to change something right away. So my biggest compulsion was leading from my unwillingness to deal with uncertainty. And because I didn't want to deal with uncertainty, I would change things in the moment and stuff like that. I didn't trust myself. Erica was like, you don't trust yourself at all. You don't have any willpower to see things through. And Erica was completely correct about that. So you could see things through for a month or so, or 2 months, maybe medication related, talking to your doctor, of course. Maybe like myself, not going to the gym for a month or so. And no matter what happens, you could still handle all that discomfort and go from there. So these are very important things to talk about. The internal thermometer, though, is more than likely the biggest compulsion for the vast majority of people. Like I said, with the Puro type of community, it's kind of a wishy-washy term and makes people think that, they're like, this person has compulsions they can bring down. I have no compulsions to bring down, so I'm going to be stuck like this forever. That's not necessarily the case. Rob and I would probably agree that it's time to move away from the term Puro. I think it is more detrimental than beneficial. Themes, as Kirsty said, can give you an idea of maybe why that theme is going on, to look at your irrational core fears. Pure O isn't really like that. It's more of just a lie in a lot of ways, because, again, people think they just have an obsession with no compulsions. And as we know, that is not physiologically possible. You have compulsions. They're just mostly mental. And more than likely, there actually is some physical ones. But because people are thinking about hiding stuff and switches and counting and stuff like that, they tend to think that that's the number one thing going on. But there's other hidden mental compulsions, physical compulsions you're doing more than likely, which would probably be avoidance. Avoidance was a big one for me. So let's say you believe you have something as such as Puro, and you say to me, Nick, I have Puro, I have no compulsions. And I say, let me know what are some things you like doing or you don't do anymore. And they might say something like, I don't go to, I don't stay out late anymore because I'm a little bit too anxious when I do. Well, there's a compulsion right there for you. That's an avoidance compulsion. I'm not saying you have to go to a techno club till 7 in the morning, 5 days a week, but it's not as straightforward as you think. It really does tend to leave people thinking they're treatment resistant, which unfortunately there is no such thing in my personal opinion. Just a fear that hasn't been quite worked on yet. So we are just humans with fear, and without fear, we bring down the need to do compulsions because we don't need to rid ourselves from the fear. So when we start to understand and work towards our fear, we start to bring down that cycle as a whole. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope I explained the internal thermometer very well. I've had a lot of people ask me about that. Again, don't get discouraged. I know it's very easy to berate yourself and put yourself down, causing secondary and tertiary problems. First problem, you have OCD or are OCD. Second problem, maybe you drink to avoid your feelings. Third problem, you down yourself for your drinking. Well, if you're constantly downing yourself, you can't even touch the secondary problem, and you're not even going to get to the primary problem. So, taking away the compulsive behaviors to hide from your feeling, and taking away the tertiary ones of avoidance behaviors really can be a way to bring down the whole entire cycle. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a great day.